Oh man! Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode of Friday Night Fairy Tales! Whoa there, my model is broken! So much scuff today! Wouldn't be an episode without scuff from a VTuber! Hello everybody! Great, everything is working! How's everybody doing today? I hope y'all are going- blah blah blah. Hope y'all are doing well! Oh man, I think the heat is getting to my brain. It's been so warm the past 2 days, a heat wave has swept across the country and unforetold heat has plagued our nation. It's so warm and my AC is blasting at full volume to try its best to keep things cool, and I've already turned it down just a little bit so that it won't interfere with my microphone too much. Hopefully my audio quality is still okay. Yippee! How's everybody doing? Hello Rosebud Live, hello Plague. How's it going? Hope y'all are doing well on this lovely day. I will be disobeying my parents because today on Friday Night Fairy Tales episode 1 we are reading the Grimm fairy tales, which are a very well-known series of stories that I have actually never read before, so this will be a very interesting time. Hello, hello! Hope y'all are doing well. I have not yet chosen exactly which stories I wanted to read because I don't want to go into this podcast reading anything beforehand. At least I want to keep it that way to the best of my ability. I want everything to be a surprise so that my reaction is in this recording, live on stream. And all of that. So, and I also don't know how long each story takes. So we're probably going to read a bunch of stories until I get sleepy and drift off to dreamlands along with y'all. So yes, hello everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Friday Night Fairy Tales. Before we get started with the actual podcast, I have to vent a little bit because I was walking to the grocery store and walking home, and there's this one intersection that I cross that I think is absolutely diabolical. And I say this because you're basically crossing about 6 lanes of a heavily trafficked road where there's 2 lanes, one on either side that has like parking spaces, and then 2 lanes going either direction for the actual cars. And so you cross this huge intersection, which if anybody knows the United States, it's that intersections are massive. And as I'm crossing, I look up at the blinking light that tells me how many seconds I have left to cross. And I'm like barely halfway across, and it's like, well, you got 2 seconds left, buckaroo. If you don't make it across, you're just gonna get hit by a car. Good luck, so long, fella. And I'm like, what? This thing only gives us like 17 seconds to cross the entire 6 lanes of traffic, plus an additional one because there's a bunch of other roads intersecting as well here. It's this big, I don't know, intersection of a bunch of things that looks like a star or whatever. And so you're not only crossing 6 lanes, but an additional one because of that other road that in order to get to the grocery store. And so I think that this is absolutely diabolical and unfair to all pedestrians. And then so on the way back out of the grocery store, I opted to walk a little bit further down the road along one other side so that I didn't have to cross this godforsaken crosswalk. And as I went to another part of the street that didn't have as much going on, I waited for God knows how long in order to cross. It was like me and 2 other people looking up at the red lights and being like, when can we cross? It's been like 2 whole minutes. God dang. I can't believe it. So today was a journey. And this is a common gripe I have with this particular area, and that specific road. So yes, everybody, that is my story for today. But yeah, hope everybody is doing well. I wanted to start with the fairy tale The Frog Prince, and a lot of these stories I really am actually unfamiliar with entirely. I know some of the names, like Rapunzel, and I don't know, some of them here and there. I've heard of some of them, but I really have not read any of these in depth. So I'm just going to pick whichever ones I think has interesting titles, and on top of that, we're just gonna see how many we can get through. So if y'all have any that you recommend as we go along, please let me know and I can thumb through to that page. I found a couple different sites that have the Grimm fairy tales in text. Some of them, the UI makes me want to claw my eyes out just a little bit. I'm reading it and I'm like, oh dear, this text is tiny and it's like burning into my retinas. So we're probably not going to use those sites. Or it's one of those sites where from the very left side of my screen to the very right side of my screen, it is just giant lines of text in teeny tiny, like 9-point font text that stretches for pages upon pages upon pages for every single story. And each story is relatively short, but it's still, like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh god, it's too overwhelming. And then this one particular site that I'm looking at has, like, quotation marks that are in even smaller text. Like, how do you expect me to read that? Ain't no way. It's about to get brutal if these are the original Grimm's fairy tales. I am currently reading from Internet Archive, archive.org, and I'm reading the book version of it. There is a scanned version of this book that I'm reading from because I like actually seeing the page numbers at the top and, you know, being able to like flip through the pages, so to speak, digitally. So I'm looking at it through this little like book viewer window thing. And that's how we're gonna read it. So we're gonna see. Copy and paste a word. I don't know if I want to do that. I think I'll stick to reading it from the book because there's something very charming about having a handheld book or sheets. Perhaps that might be something that I consider in the future, especially if I start reading stories that are written, not sheets, docs, same thing. I might consider that once I start getting into stories that have like multiple parts on different pages as like separate posts or things like that. So perhaps at some point we will move over towards that kind of formatting for my reading on my end. But that is purely a me problem. Purely just a me problem. What are we talking about, Minu asks? Glad that you asked! This is episode 1 of Friday Night Fairy Tales, my new podcast series where we are going to be reading various fairy tales, folklore stories, maybe some creepy things, and overall just having a good time with fantastical ideas. So, I've had this idea ruminating in my brain for quite a while and I'm very excited to get started on it. I'm actually really excited for this, Blake says. Me too! I'm very excited, and I hope that people enjoy it. And as well, I will be uploading this to YouTube, and in the future, I have plans, and I will let you guys know, I have plans to upload this as well to Spotify, and maybe also to Apple Podcast. We'll see which platforms I'll be able to get this podcast onto. So hopefully that will be a couple of different outlets in which you can check out the podcast and maybe reach some more people. So, for the time being, these will be up on my main YouTube page at Conasomnia, and I hope that this will go well. Yeah, the first episode, the pilot episode, if you will, where we're testing this out and seeing how it works. Hopefully this will go well. Alright, let's get started with the Grimm fairy tales. The first one that I'm reading is The Frog Prince. Long ago, when wishes often came true, there lived a king whose daughters were all handsome. But the youngest was so beautiful that the sun himself, who has seen everything, was bemused every time he shone over her because of her beauty. Near the royal castle there was a great dark wood, and in the wood, under an old linden tree, was a well. And when the day was hot, the king's daughter used to go forth into the wood, and sit by the brink of the cool well. And if the time seemed long, she would take out a golden ball and throw it up and catch it again, and this was her favorite pastime. Now it happened one day that the golden ball, instead of falling back into the maiden's little hand, which had sent it aloft, dropped to the ground near the edge of the well and rolled in. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes as it sank, but the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Then she began to weep, and she wept and wept as if she could never be comforted. And in the midst of her weeping, she heard a voice saying to her, "What ails you, king's daughter? Your tears would melt a heart of stone." And when she looked to see where the voice came from, there was nothing but a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Oh, is it you, old waddler?" said she. "I weep because my golden ball has fallen into the well." "Never mind, do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help you, but what will you give me if I fetch up your ball again?" "Whatever you like, dear frog," she said. "Any of my clothes, my pearls and jewels, or even the golden crown that I wear." "Your clothes, your pearls and jewels, and your golden crown are not for me," answered the frog, "but if you would love me, and have me for your companion and playfellow, and let me sit by you at table, and eat from your plate, and drink from your cup, and sleep in your little bed, if you would promise all this, then would I dive below the water and fetch you your golden ball again." Girly Pop, have you ever heard of stranger danger? Ever heard of stranger danger? Don't do it! Don't do it! This is so sauce, what the heck? What's going on here? "Oh yes," she answered. "No! No, little girl, no! I will promise it all, whatever you want, if you will only get me my ball again." But she thought to herself, what nonsense he talks, as if he could do anything but sit in the water and croak with the other frogs, or could possibly be anyone's companion. Dang right! But the frog, as soon as he heard her promise, drew his head under the water and sank down out of sight. But after a while, he came to the surface again with the ball in his mouth, and he threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was overjoyed to see her pretty plaything again, and she caught it up and ran off with it. "Stop, stop," cried the frog. "Take me up too. I cannot run as fast as you." But it was of no use, for croak and croak after her as he might, she would not listen to him, but made haste home, and very soon forgot all about the poor frog, who had to betake himself to his well again. The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at table with the king and all the court, and eating from her golden plate, there came something pitter-patter up the marble stairs, and then there came a knocking at the door, and a voice crying, "Youngest king's daughter, let me in!" And she got up and ran to see who it could be, but when she opened the door, there was the frog sitting outside. Then she shut the door hastily and went back to her seat, feeling very uneasy. "She done goofed! She done messed up! Oh no!" The king noticed how quickly her heart was beating and said, "My child, what are you afraid of? Is there a giant standing at the door ready to carry you away?" "Oh no," answered she, "no giant, but a horrid frog." "And what does the frog want?" asked the king. "Oh, dear father," answered she, "when I was sitting by the well yesterday and playing with my golden ball, it fell into the water, and while I was crying for the loss of it, the frog came and got it again for me, on condition I would let him be my companion. But I never thought that he would leave the water and come after me, but now there he is outside the door and he wants to come in to me." And then they all heard him knocking the second time and crying, "Youngest king's daughter, open to me, by the well water, what you promised me, or what promised you me." "That which thou hast promised, must thou perform," said the king. "So go now, and let him in." Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. This is interesting. It's kind of touching on the topics of first, the dangers of talking to someone. I feel like, I don't know, my inclination is, I don't trust this frog immediately. This frog seems sus to me. But then at the same time, it's also obviously talking about upholding your promises. So we'll see how this goes. I think this will be very interesting. So she went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, following at her heels till she reached her chair. Then he stopped and cried, "Lift me up to sit by you." But she delayed doing so until the king ordered her. When once the frog was on the chair, he wanted to get on the table, and there he sat and said, "Now push your golden plate a little nearer so that we may eat together." And so she did, but everybody might see how unwilling she was, and the frog feasted heartily, but every morsel seemed to stick in her throat. "I've had enough now," said the frog at last, "and as I am tired, you must carry me to your room and make ready with your silken bed, and we will lie down and go to sleep." Then the king's daughter began to weep and was afraid of the cold frog, that nothing would satisfy him, but he must sleep in her pretty clean bed. Now the king grew angry with her, saying, "That which thou hast promised, in thy time of necessity, must thou now perform." So she picked up the frog with her finger and thumb, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. And when she had laid down to sleep, he came creeping up, saying, "I'm tired and I want to sleep as much as you. Take me up, or I will tell your father." Then she felt beside herself with rage, and picking him up, she threw him with all her strength against the wall, crying, "Now will you be quiet, you horrid frog?" Oh no. She just yeeted the frog across the room. Oh girl, you done goofed with that. Oh no. I mean, I didn't trust this frog, but like, what? But as he fell, he ceased to be a frog and became all at once a prince with beautiful kind eyes. And it came to pass that, with her father's consent, they became bride and bridegroom. Hey, yo, what? That's a turn that wait. Is this the one where, like, that got turned into the story of the princess and, like, kissing the frog? So that the frog turns back into a human? Is that the story? This is what it originally was? I had no idea. And he told her how a wicked witch had bound him by her spells, and how no one but she alone could have released him, and that they two would go together to his father's kingdom. Okay, it's kind of crazy though, that the key to releasing him from the frog form was chucking him against a wall. Am I crazy for that? I feel like that's wild. And there came to the door a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, with white plumes on their heads, and with golden harness. And behind the carriage was standing faithful Henry, the servant of the young prince. Now faithful Henry had suffered such care and pain when his master was turned into a frog, that he had been obliged to wear 3 iron bands over his heart, to keep it from breaking, with trouble and anxiety. When the carriage started to take the prince to his kingdom, and faithful Henry had helped them both in, he got up behind and was full of joy at his master's deliverance. And when they had gone a part of the way, the prince heard a sound at the back of the carriage, as if something had broken. And he turned round and cried, "Henry, the wheel must be breaking." But Henry answered, "The wheel does not break. 'Tis the band round my heart, that to lessen its ache, when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart." And again, and yet once again, there was the same sound, and the prince thought it must be the wheel breaking. But it was the breaking of the other bands from faithful Henry's heart, because he was so relieved and happy. That's such a sweet ending. That's so cute. How poetic. The wheel does not break, 'tis the band round my heart, that to lessen its ache, when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart. What a beautiful, like, poem. I love that so much. It's very heartfelt, and it speaks to the idea of, like, toiling along, like, you continue forward and you persist through trials and tribulations and worries and troubles. Because the wheel does not break, the wheel continues to turn, but you strengthen your heart in order to prevent the emotions from being too overwhelming. That's such a sweet line. That's very interesting. But also, what happens to the princess at the end? It's just like, it became a story about the prince, I guess, and I guess it was kind of always about the prince, but but what happened to the princess there? Okay. Very interesting though, that it's like, oh, if you fulfill your promises, you will get good things that come to you, yada yada yada. Interesting story. Alright, moving on to the next. What shall we read next? There's a story called The Golden Key. I have no idea what any of these stories are about, but let's take a peek at this one, shall we? The Golden Key. In the winter time, when deep snow lay on the ground, a poor boy was forced to go out on a sledge to fetch wood. When he had gathered it together and packed it, he wished, as he was so frozen with cold, not to go home at once, but to light a fire and warm himself a little. So he scraped away the snow, and as he was thus clearing the ground, he found a tiny gold key. Hereupon he thought that where the key was, the lock must also be, and dug in the ground and found an iron chest. Ooh, interesting. If the key does but fit it, thought he, no doubt there are precious things in that little box. He searched, but no keyhole was there. At last he discovered one, but so small that it was hardly visible. He tried it and the key fitted it exactly. Then he turned it once round, and now we must wait until he has quite unlocked it and opened the lid, and then we shall learn what wonderful things were lying in that box. Oh, wait, this is so much shorter than I thought it would be. Did you just blue ball us? Hey, yo, give me the rest of the story. I want to know what's in the box. But I guess that's the point, isn't it? That we don't always get to know. And that the story can end, and we gotta have patience, and closure doesn't always come to those who ask. No. Alright, fine. Alright, fine. Let's find another story, shall we? So there's a story that's a little longer, that's called The Little Farmer. Let's read this one. There was a certain village where lived many rich farmers and only one poor one whom they called the Little Farmer. He had not even a cow, and still less had he money to buy one, and he and his wife greatly wished for such a thing. One day he said to her, "Listen, I have a good idea. It is that your godfather, the joiner, shall make us a calf of wood and paint it brown so as to look just like any other. And then in time, perhaps it will grow big and become a cow." That's such a sweet sentiment. Oh, that's so cute. They'll like fashion something out of wood instead because you can't afford a cow. I feel like that's me with a lot of the things that I do. If I don't got the money, I try and make it myself. And this notion pleased the wife, and Godfather Joiner set to work to saw and plane, and soon turned out a calf complete, with its head down and neck stretched out as if it were grazing. The next morning, as the cows were driven to pasture, the little farmer called out to the drover, "Look here, I have got a little calf to go, but it is still young and must be carried." "All right," said the drover, and tucked it under his arm, carried it into the meadows, and stood it in the grass. So the calf stayed where it was put and seemed to be eating all the time. The drover thought to himself, "It will soon be able to run alone if it grazes at that rate." In the evening, when the herds had to be driven home, he just said to the calf, "If you can stand there eating like that, you can just walk off on your own 4 legs. I'm not gonna leg you under my arm again." But the little farmer was standing by his house door and waiting for his calf. And when he saw the cowherd coming through the village without it, he asked what it meant. Did Guy just leave the calf behind? Did Guy really just leave a baby cow behind? What the heck? Like, how irresponsible, first and foremost. Like, what do you mean you're just gonna... And also, like... Isn't there the whole thing about, like, you count all of your sheep, you count all of your cows to make sure that they're all there? Like, these creatures are, like, so precious. Like, what? What? What do you mean? Then the little farmer said, the cowherd answered, "It is still out there eating away, and never attended to the call, and would not come with the rest." Then the little farmer said, "I will tell you what, I must have my beast brought home." Dang, right? Yeah, what the heck? What the heck? What do you mean you're not gonna bring the calf home? That's crazy. And then they went together through the fields in quest of it, but someone had stolen it and it was gone. Well, yeah, duh. And the drover said, "Most likely it has run away." Is the drover rage baiting me? What is going on here? But the little farmer said, "Not it," and brought the cowherd before the bailiff, who ordered him for his carelessness to give the little farmer a cow for the missing calf. Yeah, that sounds about right, don't it? So now the little farmer and his wife possessed their long-wished-for cow. They rejoiced with all their hearts, but unfortunately they had no fodder for it and could give it nothing to eat, so that before long they had to kill it. What? What? No, that's so sad. Its flesh they salted down, and the little farmer went to the town to sell the skin and buy a new calf with what he got it for. On the way, he came to the mill, where a raven was sitting with broken wings, and he took it up out of pity and wrapped it in the skin. The weather was very stormy, and it blew and rained, so he turned into the mill and asked for shelter. The miller's wife was alone in the house, and she said to the little farmer, "Well, come in and lie down in the straw." And she gave him a piece of bread and cheese. So the little farmer ate, and they then lay down with a skin near him, and the miller's wife thought he was sleeping with fatigue. After a while, in came another man, and the miller's wife received him very well, saying, "My husband is out, we will make good cheer." The little farmer listened to what they had said, and when he heard good cheer spoken of, he grew angry to think that he had been put off with bread and cheese. For the miller's wife presently brought out roast meat, salad, cakes, and wine. Is she cheating on him? Oh, is there an affair going on? Now as the pair were sitting down to their feast, there came a knock at the door. "Oh dear," cried the woman, "it is my husband." In a twinkling, she popped the roast meat into the oven, and the wine under the pillow, the salad in the bed, the cakes under the bed, and the man in the linen closet. Okay, that's a crazy lineup. Hold on. First and foremost, that's a wild lineup for where you're putting all of these items. Let's discuss this for a quick second. Okay, the roast meat in the oven is perfectly valid. That makes a lot of sense. The wine under the pillow, I guess I can see it. Sure, that's fine. A little uncomfy, but like, look man, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. The salad in the bed? The salad in the bed? Why would you put the salad in the bed? The cake's under the bed? Under the bed is dusty. What do you mean under the bed? And the man in the linen closet. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. But like, am I crazy? Like, I'm just imagining all of the blankets with like cheese and salad, like leaves, like sprinkled across. Like, what? When the miller saw the little farmer lying in the straw, he said, "What fellow have you got there?" "Oh," said the wife, "the poor chap came in the midst of the wind and rain and asked for shelter, and I gave him some bread and cheese and spread some straw for him." The husband answered, "Oh, well, I have no objection, only get me something to eat at once." But the wife said, "There is nothing but bread and cheese." "Anything will do for me," answered the miller, "bread and cheese forever." And catching sight of the little farmer, he cried, "Come along and keep me company." The little farmer did not wait to be asked twice, but sat down and ate. After a while, the miller noticed the skin lying on the ground with a raven wrapped up in it, and he said, "What have you got there?" The little farmer answered, "A fortune teller." And the miller asked, "Can he tell my fortune?" "Why not?" answered the little farmer. "He will tell 4 things, and the 5th he keeps to himself." Now the miller became very curious and said, "Ask him to say something." And the little farmer pinched the raven so that it croaked. "Grr, grr." "What does he say?" asked the miller. And the little farmer answered, "First he says that there is wine under the pillow." Hey, yo! Hey, yo, he ratted on him. He can be ratting on him. Good for the little farmer. Dang. Okay, he's a homie, that one. Alright, sure. That would be jolly, cried the miller, and he went to look and found the wine, and then asked, "What next?" So the little farmer made the raven croak again, and then said, "He says, secondly, that there is roast meat in the oven." "That will be jolly," cried the miller, and he went and looked and found the roast meat. The little farmer made the fortune teller speak again, and then said, "He says, thirdly, that there is salad in the bed." "That will be jolly," cried the miller, and went and looked and found the salad. Once more, the little farmer pinched the raven so that he croaked and said, he says, fourthly and lastly, that there are cakes under the bed. That would be jolly, cried the miller, and he went and looked and found the cakes. Okay, so he didn't tell the guy about the linen closet. Okay, well, I guess we'll see what happens next. But I still find it crazy that he put the salad in the bed. And then also that the miller then cries that would be jolly. What do you mean by that? Is it a norm for people to put salad in their bed? Am I crazy for this? And now the two sat at the table, and the miller's wife felt very uncomfortable, and she went to bed and took all the keys with her. The miller was eager to know what the fifth thing could be, but the little farmer said, suppose we eat the 4 things in peace first, for the 5th thing is a great deal worse. So they sat and ate. By the way, that's great poetry. Suppose we eat the 4 things in peace first, for the 5th thing is a great deal worse. Like, just reading that sentence, the cadence of the words is great. That's cool. So they sat and ate, and while they ate, they bargained together as to how much the miller would give for knowing the 5th thing, and at last they agreed upon $300. Dang! That's some money right there! That's a whole bet! Alright, cool, bet. Then the little farmer pinched the raven so that he croaked aloud. Also, they're just torturing this poor raven this entire time. This raven is being forced to croak over and over again. I don't know whether the raven has been given anything to eat or drink at all during this time. It's just like, dance, monkey, dance, dance for me. This poor raven. This raven will remember this. He says that there is a demon in the linen closet. Ooh, then said the miller, that demon must come out of the linen closet, and he unbarred the house door, while the little farmer got the key of the linen closet from the miller's wife and opened it. There's no way that the miller's wife would have given the key with consent. There's no way that she would have given that willingly, right? I mean, like, okay, so she took the keys with her, and then she went to bed. So did they, while she was sleeping, go get the keys? Or did she just, like, go and get the keys? Sorry, did they go and get the keys? Like, I don't know. And did they demand it from her? I don't know, man. Then the man rushed forth and out of the house, and the miller said, I saw the rogue with my own eyes, so that is a good riddance. And the little farmer took himself off by daybreak next morning with the $300. And after this, the little farmer, by degrees, got on in the world, and built himself a good house, and the other farmers said, surely the little farmer has been where it rains gold pieces, and has brought home money by the bushel. Dang, that guy was definitely rich to be able to bet $300 on this like that. And he was summoned before the bailiff to say whence his riches came, and all he said was, I sold my calf skin for $300. When the other farmers heard this, they wished to share such good luck and ran home, killed all their cows. Whoa there. Whoa, killed all their whoa there. Talk about putting all your eggs in one basket type deal. Skinned them in order to sell them, also for the same high price as the little farmer, and the bailiff said, I must be beforehand with them. So he sent his servant into the town to the skin buyer, and he only gave her $3 for the skin, and that was faring better than the others, for when they came, they did not get as much as that. For the skin buyer says, what am I to do with all these skins? Now the other farmers were very angry with the little farmer for misleading them, and they vowed vengeance against him, and went to complain of his deceit to the bailiff. The poor little farmer was with one voice sentenced to death, and to be put into a cask with holes in it, and rolled into the water. That's an insane torture device. What the heck? That's wild right there. Y'all are just gonna, like, drown this person in a box? That's crazy! So he was led to execution, and a priest was fetched to say a mass for him, and the rest of the people had to stand at a distance. As soon as the little farmer caught sight of the priest, he knew him for the man who was hid in the linen closet at the miller's, and he said to him, As I let you out of the cupboard, you must let me out of the cask. At that moment, a shepherd passed with a flock of sheep, and the little farmer, knowing him to have a great wish to become bailiff himself, called out with all his might, "No, I will not, and if all the world asked me, I would not." The shepherd, hearing him, came up and asked what it was he would not do. The little farmer answered, "They want to make me bailiff if I sit in this cask, but I will not do it." The shepherd asked, "If that is all there is to do in order to become bailiff, I will sit in the cask and welcome." And the little farmer answered, "Yes, that is all. Just you get into the cask and you will become bailiff." So the shepherd agreed and got in, and the little farmer fastened on the top. Then he collected the herd of sheep and drove them away. Whoa! Whoa there! Wait a minute. So he just tricked this guy? He just tricked this guy into going to his death instead of him. I don't know how to feel about the little farmer now. Guy just what? Also, is my audio cutting out? I just gotta check real quick, because I think I have a limiter on and I might be peaking my mic. Let me turn down my volume just a tad. Hopefully that will improve the audio quality. So the shepherd agreed and got in, and the little farmer fastened on the top. Then he collected the herd of sheep and drove them away. Truly insane behavior right there. What the heck? The priest went back to the parish assembly and told them the mass had been said. Then they came and began to roll the cask into the water, and as it went, the shepherd inside called out, "I consent to be bailiff." They thought that it was the little farmer who spoke, and they answered, "All right, but first you must go down below and look about you a little." And they rolled the cask into the water. This is cold! This is so cold! Dang! Upon that, the farmers went home, and when they reached the village, there they met the little farmer driving a flock of sheep and looking quite calm and contented. The farmers were astonished and cried, "Little farmer, whence come you? How did you get out of the water?" "Oh, easily," answered he. "I sank and sank until I came to the bottom, then I broke through the cask and came out of it, and there were beautiful meadows and plenty of sheep feeding, so I brought away this flock with me." What a liar! Dang, what a liar! What? Then said the farmers, "Are there any left?" "Oh yes," answered the little farmer, "more than you can possibly need." Then the farmers agreed that they would go and fetch some sheep also, each man a flock for himself, and the bailiff said, "Me first." And they all went together, and in the blue sky there were little fleecy clouds like lambkins, and they were reflected in the water, and the farmers cried out, "There are sheep down there at the bottom." When the bailiff heard that, he pressed forward and said, "I will go first and look about me, and if things look well, I will call to you." And he jumped plump into the water, and they all thought that the noise he made meant, "Come." So the whole company jumped in one after the other. So perished all the proprietors of the village, and the little farmer, as sole heir, became a rich man. I don't know how I feel about this. Once he acquired wealth. Granted, they accused him falsely, because he did acquire that money by valid means. But then he lied in multiple circumstances, and then got killed for it? I don't know how I feel about that, to be so truthful. That seems not okay to me, you know? So that's like, I feel kind of conflicted about the story. When I came into the fairy tale, sort of thinking about, well, like, what exactly is going on here? And, like, what are these stories about? The overall consensus that I got was, oh, you're like, it's bedtime stories so that it's teaching kids to, like, obey and be good and do the right thing and be honorable. And then I read a story like this and I'm like, well, the little farmer lied on a lot of different occasions. And granted, he did a good thing once, but then after that, he sent a bunch of people to their deaths. Like, just because they falsely accused you doesn't also mean that they deserve the death punishment as well. Like, what? I don't know how I feel about that, honestly. But an interesting story nonetheless. Therefore, we continue. There's a story called Ooh, let me find another one. I'm trying to look for ones that have a decent amount of length. There's one called The Singing Bone. And this title strikes me as interesting, so let's give this one a try. The Singing Bone. A certain country was greatly troubled by a wild boar that attacked workers in the fields, killed men, and tore them to pieces with its terrible tusks. The king of the country had offered rich rewards to anyone who would rid the land of this terror, but the beast was so huge and ferocious that no man could even be persuaded to enter the forest where the animal made its home. At last, the king made a proclamation that he would give his only daughter in marriage to any man who would bring the wild boar to him, dead or alive. There lived 2 brothers in that country, the sons of a poor man, who gave notice of their readiness to enter on this perilous undertaking. The elder, who was clever and crafty, was influenced by pride. The younger, who was innocent and simple, offered himself from kindness of heart. Thereupon the king advised that as the best and safest way would be to take opposite directions into the wood. The elder was to go in the evening, and the younger in the morning. Oh dear, the elder, who was clever and crafty, was influenced by pride. I have a feeling that in the dark of night, the elder is gonna play some tricks on the younger sibling. Oh dear, we're gonna see how this turns out. I fear for the younger sibling here. Oh dear. The younger had not gone far when a little fairy stepped up to him. Aha, we're getting into the fairies now. He held in his hand a black spear and said, I will give you the spear because your heart is innocent and good. With this you can go out and discover the wild boar, and he shall not be able to harm you. He thanked the little man, took the spear, placed it on his shoulder, and without delay went further into the forest. It was not long before he espied the animal coming toward him, and fiercely making ready to spring. But the youth stood still and held the spear firmly in front of him. In wild rage, the fierce beast ran violently toward him and was met by the spear, on the point of which he threw himself, and, as it pierced his heart, he fell dead. Then the youngster took the dead monster on his shoulder and went to find his brother. As he approached the other side of the wood, where stood a large hall, he heard music and found a number of people dancing, drinking wine, and making merry. His elder brother was among them, for he thought the wild boar would not run far away, and he wished to get up his courage for the evening by cheerful company and wine. When he caught sight of his younger brother coming out of the forest laden with his booty, the most restless jealousy and malice rose in his heart. But he disguised his bitter feelings and spoke kindly to his brother and said, Come in and stay with us, dear brother, and rest a while, and get up your strength by a cup of wine. So the youth, not suspecting anything wrong, carried the dead boar into his brother's house and told him of the little man he had met in the wood, who had given him the spear, and how he had killed the wild animal. The elder brother persuaded him to stay and rest till the evening, and then they went out together in the twilight and walked by the river till it became dark. A little bridge lay across the river, over which they had to pass, and the elder brother let the young one go before him. When they arrived at the middle of the stream, the wicked man gave his younger brother a blow from behind, and he fell down dead instantly. Oh, what? Huh? That's crazy, man. How did we get here? That was so sudden. What the heck? I was not expecting him to just die immediately. Huh? That's wild. Okay. I guess we continue? But fearing he might not be quite dead, he threw the body over the bridge into the river and through the clear waters, saw it sink into the sand. After this wicked deed, he ran home quickly, took the dead wild boar on his shoulders, and carried it to the king with the pretense that he had killed the animal, and that therefore he could claim the princess as his wife according to the king's promise. Oh, God. But these dark deeds are not often concealed. Yeah, I mean, God was also not particularly smart. You threw your brother into the river, and you saw that the water was clear. If you're gonna kill someone, Like, that's a stupid way to, like, he didn't cover his tracks very well, let's be real here. But at the same time, like, I feel like he could have come up with a better excuse if you wanted to do that. You know, like, you could be like, oh god, like, the boar was so ferocious, like, he killed my younger brother, look at how, like, scarred and beat up he is now dead, and, like, boo-hoo, oh no, tee-hee ha-ha. I feel like there's a plausible story there, especially at a time where it's like forensics wasn't really a thing. So, you know, yeah, you know. Not many years after, a herdsman passing over the bridge with his flock saw beneath him in the sand a little bone as white as snow, and thought that it would make a very nice mouthpiece for his horn. Oh dear. As soon as the flock passed over the bridge, he waded into the middle of the stream, for the water was very shallow, took up the bone, and carried it home to make a mouthpiece for his horn. But the first time he blew the horn after the bone was in it, it filled the herdsman with wonder and amazement, for it began to sing of itself. And these were the words it sang. There's a little bit of supernatural in here. I like this. Ah, dear shepherd, you are blowing your own horn, with one of my bones, which night and morn lie still unburied beneath the wave, where I was thrown in a sandy grave. I killed the wild boar, and my brother slew me, and gained the princess by pretending 'twas he. Ooh, I love little poems. What a wonderful horn, said the shepherd, that can sing of itself. I must certainly take it to my lord the king. Ha 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 ha! As soon as the horn was brought before the king and blown by the shepherd, it at once began to sing the same song in the same words. The king was at first surprised, but his suspicion being aroused, he ordered that the sand under the bridge should be examined immediately. And then the entire skeleton of the murdered man was discovered, and the whole wicked deed came to light. The wicked brother could not deny the deed. He was therefore ordered to be tied in a sack and drowned, while the remains of his murdered brother were carefully carried to the churchyard and laid to rest in a beautiful grave. Whoa there! That one is a wild story. Did they tell these stories to children? That one's kind of violent. But also, interesting. I like that we got a happy ending. Also, hello, she's beauty, she is great, she will punch you in the face and tell your mom, you are a disgrace if you are a creep, it is Kana, yes, that is me. Hello, and welcome to the stream and the first episode of Friday Night Fairy Tales, where we're reading the Grimm fairy tales. We just read The Singing Bone, which is this interesting story about two brothers, one of whom killed a boar, and the other who, out of jealousy, slew his brother. And then the story of some person coming by the corpse later and being able to tell the king of the story and therefore bringing justice upon them. Yes. It is Wednesday indeed, but I am recording these on Wednesday so that they can be uploaded onto my platforms on Friday. So it's a little bit of like a weird schedule going on, but hopefully this will work out. Yes, so we're live streaming it so that anybody who wants to be here to witness it for the first time can be here at my streams, and then these will be available later as recordings. Yippee! What other stories can we read? Well, we have to read Cinderella. We simply must read Cinderella. I mean, it's such a classic that we just it's kind of a mandatory thing, I feel like. Cinderella. There was once a rich man whose wife lay sick, and when she felt her end drawing near, she called to her only daughter to come near her bed, and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and God will always take care of you, and I will look down upon you from heaven, and will be with you." And then she closed her eyes and died. The maiden went every day to her mother's grave, and wept, and was always pious and good. When the winter came, the snow covered the ground with a white covering, and when the sun came in the early spring and melted it away, the man took to himself another wife. The new wife brought 2 daughters home with her, and they were beautiful and fair in appearance, but at heart were black and ugly. And they began very evil times for the poor stepdaughter. "Is a stupid creature to sit in the same room with us," said they. "Those who eat food must earn it. She is nothing but a kitchen maid." They took away her pretty dresses and put on her an old gray kirtle and gave her wooden shoes to wear. "Just look now at the proud princess, how she is decked out," they cried as they laughing. And then they sent her into the kitchen. There she was obliged to do heavy work from morning to night, get up early in the morning, draw water, make the fires, cook, and wash. Besides that, the sisters did their utmost to torment her, mocking her and strewing peas and lentils among the ashes and sending her to pick them up. In the evenings, when she was quite tired out with her hard day's work, she had no bed to lie on, but was obliged to rest on the hearth among the cinders. And because she always looked dusty and dirty as if she had slept in the cinders, they named her Cinderella. It happened one day that the father went to the fair, and he asked his two stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Fine clothes," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the other. "But what will you have, Cinderella?" said he. "The first twig, father, that strikes against your hat on the way home. That is what I should like you to bring to me." So he bought for the two stepdaughters fine clothes, pearls, and jewels, and on his way back, as he rode a green lane, a hazel twig struck against his hat, and he broke it off and carried it home with him. When he reached home, he gave to the stepdaughters what they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the hazel twig. She thanked him, and went to her mother's grave and planted this twig there, weeping so bitterly that the tears fell upon it and watered it, and it flourished and became a fine tree. That's so tragic. That's so tragic. Also, what is going on with, the father, just turning a blind eye to this? What? Okay. Cinderella went to see it 3 times a day and wept and prayed, and each time a white bird rose up from the tree. And if she uttered any wish, the bird brought her whatever she had wished for. Now it came to pass that the king ordained a festival that should last for 3 days, and to which all the beautiful young women of that country were bidden, so that the king's son might choose a bride from among them. When the two stepdaughters heard that they too were bidden to appear, they felt very pleased, and they called Cinderella and said, "Comb our hair, brush our shoes, and make our buckles fast. We are going to the wedding feast at the king's castle." When she heard this, Cinderella could not help crying, for she too would have liked to go to the dance, and she begged her stepmother to allow her. "What, you Cinderella," said she, "in all your dust and dirt, you want to go to the festival? You that have no dress and no shoes, you want to dance?" But as she persisted in asking, at last the stepmother said, "I have strewed a dish full of lentils in the ashes, and if you can pick them all up again in 2 hours, you may go with us." Then the maiden went to the back door that led into the garden and called out, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish. The bad you may eat if you wish." Then there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and after them some turtle doves. And at last a crowd of all the birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering, and they aligned among the ashes, and the doves nodded with their heads, began to peck, pick, peck, pick, and then the others began to pick, peck, and put all the good grains into the dish. Before an hour was over, all was done, and they flew away. That's so cute! She got the help of little guys! She got little guys to help her! Then the maiden brought the dish to her stepmother, feeling joyful and thinking that now she could go to the feast. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, you have no proper clothes, and you do not know how to dance. You would be laughed at." And when Cinderella cried for disappointment, she added, "If you can pick 2 dishes full of lentils out of the ashes, nice and clean, you shall go with us," thinking to herself, "For that is not possible." When she had strewed 2 dishes full of lentils among the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." So there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and then some turtle doves, and at last a crowd of all the other birds under heaven, tripping and fluttering, and they aligned among the ashes. And the dove nodded with their heads, and began to pick, peck, and then all the others began to pick, peck, and put all the good grains into the dish. And before half an hour was over, it was all done, and they flew away. Then the maiden took the dishes to the stepmother, feeling joyful and thinking that now she should be able to go with them to the feast. But she said, "All this is of no good to you. You cannot come with us, for you have no proper clothes, cannot dance. You would put us to shame." Then she turned her back on poor Cinderella and made haste to set out with her 2 proud daughters. And as there was no one left in the house, Cinderella went to her mother's grave under the hazel bush and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird threw down a dress of gold and silver, and a pair of slippers embroidered with silk and silver. And in all haste she put on the dress and went to the festival. But her stepmother and sisters did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess. She looked so beautiful in her golden dress. Of Cinderella they never thought at all, and supposed that she was sitting at home and picking the lentils out of the ashes. The king's son came to meet her and took her by the hand and danced with her, and he refused to stand up with anyone else, so that he might not be obliged to let go her hand. And when anyone came to claim it, he answered, "She is my partner." Yippee! This is so sweet! This is so sweet! The comeuppance! And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, but the prince said he would go with her to take care of her, for he wanted to see where the beautiful maiden lived. But she escaped him and jumped up into the pigeon house. And the prince waited until the father came and told him the strange maiden had jumped into the pigeon house. The father thought to himself, "It surely cannot be Cinderella," and called for axes and hatchets and had the pigeon house cut down, but there was no one in it. And when they entered the house, there sat Cinderella in her dirty clothes among the cinders, and a little oil lamp burnt dimly in the chimney, for Cinderella had been very quick, and had jumped out of the pigeon house again, and had run to the hazel bush. And there she had taken off her beautiful dress and had it laid on the grave, and the bird had carried it away again. And then she had put on her little grey kirtle again, and had sat down in the kitchen among the cinders. The next day, when the festival began anew and the parents and stepsisters had gone to it, Cinderella went to the hazel bush and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." He's gonna go again! Also, this story has a lot of, repetition of things happening twice. That's a very interesting sort of setup for a story. It'll be... I'm curious to know what exactly that means. For everything to be repeated twice, there's gotta be some sort of symbolic meaning, I imagine. Then the bird cast down a still more splendid dress than on the day before, and when she appeared in it among the guests, everyone was astonished at her beauty. Let's go! The prince had been waiting until she came, and he took her hand and danced with her alone. And when anyone else came to invite her, he said, "She is my partner." And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, and the prince followed her, for he wanted to see to what house she belonged. But she broke away from him and ran into the garden at the back of the house. There stood a fine large tree, bearing splendid pears. She leapt as lightly as a squirrel among the branches, and the prince did not know what had become of her. So he waited until the father came, and then he told him the strange maiden had rushed from him, and that he thought she had gone up into the pear tree. The father thought to himself, "It surely cannot be Cinderella," and called for an axe, and felled the tree, but there was no one in it. And when they went into the kitchen, there sat Cinderella among the cinders, as usual. And for she had got down the other side of the tree, and had taken back her beautiful clothes to the bird on the hazel bush, and had put on her old grey kirtle again. Is that the one and only Kana? It is the one and only Kana. We're reading fairy tales today. We're partway through Cinderella. On the third day, when the parents and the stepchildren had set off, Cinderella went again to her mother's grave, and said to the tree, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Wait, are Grimm fairy tales the, really dark ones? As far as I know, that is what I've been told. That is what my impression of them are. We did just read a story about some people getting killed, about a brother conspiring to kill his younger sibling and getting away with it for a while. So, yeah, there's a little bit of misery and darkness and depression in here, some poverty and talks about abuse. So, continuing with Cinderella. Then the bird cast down a dress the like of which had never been seen for splendor and brilliancy, and slippers that were of gold. And when she appeared in this dress at the feast, nobody knew what to say for wonderment. The prince danced with her alone, and if anyone else asked her, he answered, "She is my partner." And when it was evening, Cinderella wanted to go home, and the prince was about to go with her when she ran past him so quickly that he could not follow her, but he had laid a plan, and so had caused all the steps to be spread with pitch, so that as she rushed down them, the left shoe of the maiden remained sticking in it. The prince picked it up and saw that it was of gold and very small and slender. The next morning he went to the father and told him that no one, or that none should be his bride save the one whose foot the golden shoe should fit. Ooh, interesting. So this is like, I think the story is very much so held up in the like modern day retellings of the story, at least so far. Like most of this is pretty accurate. You get that like unfortunate abusive like family dynamic, and then also like the prince chasing after the princess, or like Cinderella. But at the same time, what I remember of Cinderella from the stories growing up was that she just like tripped on her way down and then rushed away embarrassed. I didn't realize that like, oh, the prince actually like planned this and that he like set a trap for her basically so that he could find her again. I'm gonna work while I listen to this because this is interesting and I haven't heard of the Grimm fairy tales before. Please do, by all means, by all means. I'll just be reading, and this podcast is meant for all of those who like to do things and have fun and go about their lives as they listen to this podcast. Yes, yes. And when it was evening, Cinderella wanted to go home. Okay. So the following paragraph, the prince picked it up and saw that it was of gold and very slender and small. Then the two sisters were very glad because they had pretty feet. The eldest went to her room to try on the shoe, and her mother stood by, but she could not get her great toe into it, for the shoe was too small. Then her mother handed her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off, for when you are queen, you will never have to go on foot." That's crazy, by the way. I mean, for how I don't know, wealthy and prestigious and powerful the royal family was at this time, I too would cut off a toe in order to get into the royal family. Like, are you crazy? I feel like I would do that too. Honestly, it sounds absolutely bonkers nowadays, but like, you know, a lot of people do crazy things for money now. Like, I feel like this is just the equivalent back then. Do you think that when a wizard runs out of spells, they just default to using their wands to stab people with it? That's a very interesting proposition that you've got there. I think that that's a valid option. There's also the human self-preservation to think about. Yeah, I definitely agree, where it's like, especially in the case of Cinderella and like with the idea that a lot of families needed, like, I don't know, this family doesn't seem to be living in poverty, though. It just seems to be that Cinderella herself, like, has been treated poorly, especially so, and that the other sisters are very much so pampered if they're able to, like, afford pretty clothing and jewelry and all of that at this time. And so I feel like, yeah, I mean, the mother is very much so speaking out of greed in this situation, but, I mean, a lot of people do a lot of crazy things for prestige and renown nowadays. Like, look at me streaming! Then, okay, so the girl cut her toe off! Crazy. Squeezed her foot into the shoe, concealed the pain, and went down to the prince. Then he took her with him on his horse as his bride and rode off. They had to pass by the grave, and there sat the two pigeons on the hazel bush and cried, "There they go! There they go! There is blood on her shoe. The shoe was too small. Not the right bride at all." Then the prince looked at her shoe and saw the blood flowing, and he turned his horse round and took the false bride home again, saying that she was not the right one, and the other sister must try on the shoe. So she went into her room to do so and got her toes comfortably in, but her heel was too large. Then her mother handed her the knife, saying, "Cut a piece of your heel. When you are queen, you will never have to go on foot." So the girl cut a piece of her heel off and thrust her foot into the shoe, concealed the pain, and went down to the prince, who took his bride before him on his horse and rode off. When they passed by the hazel bush, the two pigeons sat there and cried, there they go, there is blood on her shoe. The shoe is too small. Not the right bride at all." Considering that if you just look wrong or the royal sees you annoying, they can just straight up make up a crime and you die? Who are they gonna... Yeah, exactly. But also, I feel like it's crazy to dare to lie to the prince like this. I feel like, I don't know, they fancy the prince a fool in this situation. And the prince looked at her foot and saw how the blood was flowing from the shoe and staining the white stocking. And he turned his horse round and brought the false bride home again. "This is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man, "only my dead wife left behind her a little stunted Cinderella. It is impossible that she can be the bride." But the king's son ordered her to be sent for her, but the mother said, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. I could not let her be seen." But he would have her fetched, and so Cinderella had to appear. First she washed her face and hands quite clean, and went in and curtsied to the prince, who held out to her the golden shoe. Then she sat down on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and slipped it onto the golden one, which fitted it perfectly. And when she stood up and the prince looked in her face, he knew again the beautiful maiden that had danced with him, and he cried, "This is the right bride." The stepmother and the two sisters were thunderstruck and grew pale with anger, but he put Cinderella before him on his horse and rode off. And as they passed the hazel bush, the two white pigeons cried, there they go, no blood on her shoe. The shoe is not too small. The right bride is she after all." And when they had thus cried, they came flying after and perched on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right and the other on the left, and so remained. When her wedding with the prince was appointed to be held, the false sisters came, hoping to curry favor and to take part in the festivities. So as the bridal procession went to the church, the eldest walked on the right side and the younger on the left, and the pigeons picked out an eye of each of them, ho, for coveting! An eye for coveting the princess's place. And as they returned, the elder was on the left side and the younger on the right. And the pigeons picked out the other eye of each of them, and so they were condemned to go blind for the rest of their days because of their wickedness and falsehood. I feel like of all of the stories, the fairy tale version versus like the old like Disney princess version end up being quite similar overall in terms of plot. I feel like the Disney princess version didn't stray too far from this narrative. It's interesting to see the differences. Like, I feel like the story about the Frog Prince was quite different. It's been changed a lot through time. But with Cinderella, it's mostly stayed somewhat similar, or somewhat the same. I mean, considering that the prince has literally been patient and let these clear signs of deception by the stepsisters go, I'd say they got lucky. I think so too. And I think in this case, there's a lot to be said about the prince. Because, like, I mean, if you think about it, also, surely the prince could have, like, pretty much any woman that he wants. There's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of, like, romance stories talking about, ooh, that prince can have whoever he wants. And can have all manner of, like, beautiful brides, like, noble women as, like, as his partner. Because of someone for that standing, like, they get so much power, it's kind of crazy. And even, like, multiple wives, too. And the fact that, like, yes, he chose a beautiful, like, the most beautiful woman at the festivities, but also, like, when he saw her in grit and grime, covered in dust and cinders and such, he was still like, yes, no, this is my wife right there. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. That's true love right there. That's awesome. I feel like this is a very feels-good story that I can understand why it became so popular. I feel like it makes a lot of sense. And it's really cute and quaint and sweet. It comes to a good ending. You get this whole arc, a full beginning, middle, and end. It's very satisfying. With the mention of wizards earlier, I wonder if I can find a story about a wizard? I don't know if there is. Ooh, Little Red Riding Hood is in here. There's the table. Oh man. I probably shouldn't read that one because YouTube might strike me down for swearing. Alright, let's see. The Devil's 3 Gold Hairs is an interesting one. What's also hilarious is that this is story 69. Alright, let's read The Devil's 3 Gold Hairs. Once there was a very poor woman who was delighted when her son was born with a caul enveloping his head. Also, thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining the Dreamers. She was delighted when her son was born with a caul enveloping his head. This was supposed to bring good fortune, and it was predicted that he would marry the king's daughter when he became 19. Soon after, a king came to the village, but no one knew that it was the king. When he asked for news, they told him that a few days before a child had been born in the village with a caul, and it was prophesied that he would be very lucky. Indeed, it had been said that in his 19th year, he would have the king's daughter for his wife. What is a caul? A C-A-U-L. Caul birth. Oh, okay. Interesting. So it's when a baby is born with the amniotic sac still enveloping like the body or the head or something. Interesting. It does. Was this like good luck back then? I mean, it was very rare. A quick Google search is telling me that a caul is rare, occurring in fewer than 1 in 80,000 births. So apparently, it was considered a lucky sign. That's very interesting. I didn't know that at all. The king, who had a wicked heart, was very angry when he heard this, but he went to the parents in a most friendly manner and said to them kindly, "Good people, give up your child to me, and I will take the greatest care of him." At first they refused, but when the stranger offered them a large amount of gold and mentioned that if their child was born to be lucky, everything must turn out for the best with him, they willingly at last gave him up. Also, hello, Ballistic Beast. Hello, welcome. We're reading the Grimm fairy tales today. Hello, hello. The king placed the child in a box and rode away with it for a long distance till he came to deep water, into which he threw the box containing the child, saying to himself as he rode away, "From this unwelcome suitor have I saved my daughter." Whoa, he just killed a kid? That's crazy. That's some wild stuff. Okay, alright. But the box did not sink. It swam like a boat on the water and so high above it that not a drop could get inside. Okay. This is very reminiscent of like Moses, I feel like, except the intention is very different. It sailed on to a spot about 2 miles from the chief town of the king's dominions, where there were a mill and a weir, which stopped it and on which it rested. The miller's man, who happened to be standing near the bank, fortunately noticed it and, thinking it would most likely contain something valuable, drew it on shore with a hook, but when he opened it there lay a beautiful baby who was quite awake and lively. He carried it in to the miller and his wife, and as they had no children, they were quite delighted and said heaven had sent the little boy to them as a gift. They brought him up carefully, and he grew to manhood, clever and virtuous. It happened one day that the king was overtaken by a thunderstorm while passing near the mill and stopped to ask for shelter. Noticing the youth, he asked the miller if that tall young man was his son. "No," he replied, "he is a foundling. 19 years ago, a box was seen sailing on the mill stream by one of our men, and when it was caught in the weir, he drew it out of the water and found the child in it." Then the king knew that this must be the child of fortune, and therefore the one which he had thrown into the water. He hid his vexation, however, and presently said kindly, "I want to send a letter to the queen my wife. If that young man will take it to her, I will give him 2 gold pieces for his trouble." Oh, he is plotting and scheming once again. We are at the king's service, replied the miller, and called to the young man to prepare for his errand. Then the king wrote a letter to the queen containing these words: "As soon as the boy who brings this letter arrives, let him be killed, and I shall expect to find him dead and buried when I come back." Dang, that's a crazy way to solve your problems. What the heck? What the heck? The youth was soon on his way with this letter. He lost himself, however, in a large forest. But when darkness came on, he saw in a distance a glimmering light, which he walked to and found a small house. He entered and saw an old woman sitting by the fire, quite alone. She appeared frightened when she saw him and said, Where do you come from, and what do you want?" "I come from the mill," he replied, "and I am carrying a letter to the wife of the king, and as I have lost my way, I should like very much to stay here during the night." "You poor young man," she replied, "you are in a den of robbers, and when they come home they may kill you." "They may come when they like," said the youth. "I am not afraid, but I am so tired that I cannot go a step further." Then he stretched himself on a bench and fell fast asleep. Soon after, the robbers came home and asked angrily what that youth was lying there for. "Ah," said the old woman, "he is an innocent child who has lost himself in the wood, and I took him out of compassion. He is carrying a letter to the queen, which the king has sent." Then the robbers went softly to the sleeping youth, took the letter from his pocket, and read in it that as soon as the bear arrived at the palace, he was to lose his life. Then pity arose, and the hard-hearted robbers and their chief tore up the letter and wrote another, in which it was stated that as soon as the boy arrived, he should be married to the king's daughter. Ooh, interesting. I feel like this is telling the story that, like, because of the king's anger and the king's terrible actions, he's actually causing all of these things to happen and causing the very prophecy to come true. It's like, what is it, the something fallacy. Or like, no, what was it? The self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what it is. Yeah, that's interesting. And also, like, when I was starting to read that, I had assumed that the robbers would, like, out of greed, they would take the letter to the king or to the queen, rather, to, like, have a handsome reward. But no, they actually read it, and that's interesting. Then they left him to lie and rest on the bench till the next morning, and when he awoke, they gave him the letter and showed him the road he was to take. As soon as he reached the palace and sent in the letter, the queen read it, and she acted in exact accordance with what was written, ordered a grand marriage feast, and had the prince married at once to the fortunate youth. He was very handsome and amiable, so that the king's daughter soon learned to love him very much, and was quite happy with him. Not long after, when the king returned home to his castle, he found the prophecy respecting the child of fortune fulfilled, and that he was married to a king's daughter. "How has this happened?" said he. "I have in my letter given very different orders." And the queen gave him the letter and said, "You may see for yourself what is stated here." The king read the letter and saw very clearly that it was not the one he had written. He asked the youth what he had done to the letter he had entrusted to him, and where he had brought the other from. "I know not," he replied, "unless it was changed during the night while I slept in the forest." Full of wrath, the king said, "You shall not get off so easily, for whoever marries my daughter must first bring me 3 golden hairs from the head of the demon of the Black Forest. If you bring them to me before long, then shall you keep my daughter as a wife, but not otherwise." Interesting. So he's plotted yet again. I'm just imagining, like, the demon that he's talking about is, like, a bear or something, like a cute black bear. Which, I mean, bears are terrifying, and they can be demonic, and they can be very scary when they're trying to defend themselves. Like, I would definitely not recommend going toe-to-toe with a bear, but, like, I don't know. Very cute. Then said the child of fortune, "I will fetch these golden hairs very quickly. I am not the least afraid of the demon." Thereupon he said farewell and started on his travels. His way led him to a large city, and as he stood at the gate and asked admission, a watchman said to him, "What trade do you follow, and how much do you know?" "I know everything," he replied. That is such a bold statement, to just, like, go up to someone and be like, "Yeah, man, I know everything." Then you can do us a favor, answered the watchman. If you can tell us why our master's fountain, from which wine used to flow, is dried up and never gives us even water now, I will tell you when I come back, he said. Only wait until then. He traveled on still further and came by and by to another town, where the watchman also asked him what trade he followed and what he knew. I know everything, he answered. Then, said the watchman, you can do us a favor and tell us why a tree in our town, which once bore golden apples, now only produces leaves. Wait till I return, he replied, and I will tell you. On he went again and came to a broad river over which he must pass in a ferry boat, and the ferryman asked him the same question about his trade and his knowledge. He gave the same reply, that he knew everything. Then said the man, you can do me a favor and tell me how it is that I am obliged to go backward and forward in my ferry boat every day without a change of any kind. Wait till I come back, he replied, then you shall know all about it. I relate on a spiritual level to this ferryman. Like, what do you mean I gotta do the same thing every day? I'm not built for corporate life. What do you mean, man? As soon as he reached the other side of the water, he found the entrance to the Black Forest, in which was the Demon's Cove. It was very dark and gloomy, and the demon was not at home, but his old mother was sitting in a large armchair, and she looked up and said, What do you want? You don't look wicked enough to be one of us. I just want 3 golden hairs from the demon's head, he replied. Otherwise, my wife will be taken away from me. Okay. I feel like this person that's been labeled a demon is just a regular old person who's just living out there and then, like, I don't know, just got labeled as a demon one day. That is asking a great deal, she replied, for if the demon comes home and finds you here, he will have no mercy on you. However, if you will trust me, I will help you. Then she turned him into an ant and said, Creep into the folds of my gown, there you will be safe. Yes, he replied, that is all very good, but I have 3 things besides that I want to know. First, why a well from which formerly wine used to flow should be dry now, so that not even water can be got from it. Secondly, why a tree that once bore golden apples should now produce nothing but leaves. And thirdly, why a ferryman is obliged to row forward and back every day without ever leaving off. These are difficult questions, said the old woman, but keep still and quiet, and when the demon comes in, pay great attention to what he says, while I pull the golden hairs out of his head. Later in the evening, the demon came home, and as soon as he entered, he declared the air was not clear. I smell the flesh of man, he said, and I am sure that there is someone here. So he peeped into all the corners and searched everywhere, but could find nothing. Then his old mother scolded him well and said, Just as I have been sweeping and dusting and putting everything in order, then you come home and give me all the work to do over again. You have always the smell of something in your nose. Do sit down and eat your supper. The demon did as she told him, and when he had eaten and drunk enough, he complained of being tired. So his mother made him lie down so that she could place his head in her lap, and he was soon so comfortable that he fell fast asleep and snored. And the old woman lifted up a golden hair, twitched it out, and laid it by her side. Oh, screamed the demon, waking up. What was that for? I have had a bad dream, answered she, and it made me catch hold of your hair. What did you dream about? Asked the demon. Oh, I dreamed of a well in a marketplace from which wine once used to flow, but now it is dried up, and they can't even get water from it. Whose fault is that? Oh, they ought to know that there sits a toad under a stone in the well, and if he were dead, wine would again flow. That's crazy that he just knows this. Like, why does the demon of all people know about this? Is this common knowledge or something? Like, what is going on here? Oh, man. Then the old woman combed his hair again till he slept and snored so loud that the windows rattled, and she pulled out the second hair. What are you about now? Asked the demon in a rage. Oh, don't be so angry, said the woman. I have had another dream. What was this dream about? He asked. Why, I dreamed that in a certain country there grows a fruit tree which used to bear golden apples, but now it produces nothing but leaves. What is the cause of this? Why, don't they know, answered the demon, that there is a mouse gnawing at the root? Were it dead, the tree would again bear golden apples, and if it gnaws much longer, the tree will wither up and dry. Bother your dreams. If you disturb me again, just as I am comfortably asleep, you will have a box on the ear. And the old woman spoke kindly to him, and smoothed and combed his hair again till he slept and snored. Then she seized the third golden hair and pulled it out. The demon on this sprang to his feet, roared out in a greater rage than ever, and would have done some mischief in the house, but she managed to appease him this time also, and said, "How can I help my bad dreams?" And whatever did you dream?" he asked with some curiosity. "Well, I dreamed about a ferryman who complains that he is obliged to take people across the river and is never free." "Oh, the stupid fellow," replied the wizard. "He can very easily ask any person who wants to be ferried over to take the oar in his hand, and he will be free at once." Then the demon laid his head down once more, and as the old mother had pulled out the 3 golden hairs and got answers to all the 3 questions, she let the old fellow rest and sleep in peace till the morning dawned. As soon as she had gone out the next day, the old woman took the ant from the folds of her dress and restored the lucky youth to his former shape. "Here are the 3 golden hairs for which you wished," says she. "And did you hear all the answers to your 3 questions?" "Yes," he replied, "every word, and I will not forget them." "Well then, I have helped you out of your difficulties, and now get home as fast as you can." This lady is she's such a wonderful person. What the? She just did all this for some random kid? Good for her. And also good for him. After thanking the old woman for her kindness, he turned his steps homeward, the full joy that everything had succeeded so well. When he arrived at the ferry, the man asked for the promised answer. "Ferry me over first," he replied, "and then I will tell you." So when they reached the opposite shore, he gave the ferryman the demon's advice that the next person who came and wished to be ferried over should have the oar placed in his hand, and from that moment he would have to take the ferryman's place. That's wild, by the way. If I had to take, like, an Uber somewhere, if I had to, like, I don't know, take a ferry across a river, and then they were like, "Alright, bye, this is your job now," I'd be like, "Oh, what the frick? Like, no, get away from me." That would be so sad. Then the youth journeyed on till he came to the town where the unfruitful tree grew and where the watchman was waiting for his answer. To him the young man repeated what he had heard and said, "Kill the mouse that is gnawing at the root. Then will your tree again bear golden apples." The watchman thanked him and gave him in return for his information 2 donkeys laden with gold, which were led after him. He very soon arrived at the city which contained the dried-up fountain. The sentinel came forward to receive his answer. Said the youth, "Under a stone in the fountain sits a toad. It must be searched for and killed, then will wine again flow from it." To show how thankful he was for his advice, the sentinel also ordered 2 donkeys laden with gold to be sent after him. At length the child of fortune reached home with his riches, and his wife was overjoyed at seeing him again, and hearing how well he had succeeded in his undertaking. He placed before the king the 3 golden hairs that he had brought from the head of the black demon, and when the king saw these and the 4 donkeys laden with gold, he was quite satisfied and said, "Now that you have performed all the required conditions, I am quite ready to sanction your marriage with my daughter, but, my dear son-in-law, tell me how you obtained all this gold. It is indeed a very valuable treasure. Where did you find it?" "I crossed the river in a ferry boat, and on the opposite shore I found some gold lying in the sand." "Can I find some if I go?" said the king eagerly. "Yes, as much as you please," replied he. "There is a ferryman—" I see where this is going! "There is a ferryman there who will row you over, and you can fill a sack in no time." Oh, tee! The greedy old king set out on his journey in all haste, and when he came near the river he beckoned to the ferryman to row him over the ferry. The man told him to step in, and just as they reached the opposite shore, he placed the rudder oar in the king's hand and sprang out of the boat, and so the king became ferryman as a punishment for his sins. I wonder if he still goes on ferrying people over the river. It is very likely, for no one has ever been persuaded to touch the oar since he took it. Oh, nice! Nice! I like the way that one ends. Justice! Justice, I say! And also, it's so obvious that, like, well, of course, like, as soon as the guy comes back with all this gold, of course, then the king is like, oh, yeah, like, oh, there's money to be had. And I definitely want that. Sure, buddy, sure. Sure, buddy. We'll take that. Also, Ballistic, thank you for redeeming the hydrate and the posture check. I will indeed fix my posture. I think it's been okay throughout the story reading so far. And also, y'all remember to hydrate. I've got some juice in front of me, so I'll take some sips. Remember to hydrate and take care of yourselves. Alright, good. Maybe we can read one or two more stories. What other stories shall we read? What other stories do y'all recommend? I still want to keep an eye out for one that's about wizards. I feel like that would be fun. Snow White is in here. I also want to read ones that are not as well known. Just so that I can sort of, like, learn more about all of these stories in general. Because, like, I kind of know the story of, like, all of the Disney princess type stuff. But I really want to explore other ones. The Lord's Animals and the Devils. That's interesting. The Heavenly Wedding. A lot of this is also very reminiscent of, like, Christian stories. I feel like this has very religious undertones to it. Or overtones. I don't know. It's definitely not hiding it very well. There's literally a chapter called 12 Apostles, and then another one called Faithful John, so I have a feeling. Which makes sense for the time. Oh, there's a story called Hans the Hedgehog. We have to read that. We absolutely have to read this one. We gotta read about the hedgehog. There once was a countryman who had money and land in plenty, but no matter how rich he was, one thing was still wanting to complete his happiness. He had no children. Often when he went into the town with the other peasants, they mocked him and asked why they had no children. At last he became angry, and when he got home he said, "I will have a child, even if it be a hedgehog." Then his wife had a child, and that was a hedgehog in the upper part of his body, and a boy in the lower. When she saw the child, she was terrified, and said, "See there, thou hast brought ill luck on us." Honestly, if I were her, I'd be terrified as well. Like, also, how do you birth a creature like that? Like, I feel like that's, I don't know, anatomy-wise, that's gotta be crazy. That's terrifying, indeed. And like, I don't know, physiologically speaking, how do you take care of this now? The boy, then said the man, "What can be done now? The boy must be christened, but we shall not be able to get a godfather for him." The woman said, "We cannot call him anything else but Hans the Hedgehog." Oh my gosh. So he was like, "Yeah, there's no choice. We have no choice. We have to call him Hans the Hedgehog." When he was christened, the person said he cannot go into any ordinary bed because of his spikes. Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Anatomically speaking, how do you give birth to something with spikes? Like, I feel like when hedgehogs get birds, they're like I don't know, like, what does a hedgehog look like? Hedgehog? Newborn. Hedgehog newborn. Yeah, they've got, like, spikes, but it's, like, soft spikes. They're not, like, fully developed yet. So, like, does this hedgehog kid have, like, fully formed spikes? What's going on here? So a little straw was put behind the stove, and the Hans the Hedgehog was laid on it. His mother could not suckle him, for he would have pricked her with his quills. So he lay there behind the stove for 8 years, and his father was tired of him, and thought if he would but die. He did not die, however, but remained lying there. So the hedgehog just lay there? For 8 years? That's crazy! That's wild. Okay, what the heck? And now it happened that there was a fair in the town, and the peasant was about to go to it, and asked for his wife what he should bring back with him for her. "A little meat and a couple of white rolls, which are wanted for the house," said she. Then he asked the servant, and she wanted a pair of slippers and some stockings with clocks. At last he said also, "And what wilt thou have, Hans my the Hedgehog?" "Dear father," he said, "do bring me bagpipes." Oh. When, therefore, the father came home again, he gave his wife what he had bought for her, meat and white rolls, and then he gave the maid the slippers and the stockings with clocks. And lastly, he went behind the stove and gave Hans the bagpipes. And when the Hans the Hedgehog had the bagpipes, he said, "Dear father, do go to the forge and get the cockshod, and then I will ride away and never come back again." On this, the father was delighted to think that he was going to get rid of him, and had the shod for him, and when it was done, Hans the Hedgehog got on it and rode away, but took swine and donkeys with him, which he intended to keep in the forest. What the heck? Okay, some of the families in the story are crazy. I don't know if this was the norm at the time, but were a lot of them were I don't want my kids anymore? Is this a normal thing for that time? When they got there, he made the bird fly onto a high tree with him, and there he sat for many a long year, and watched his donkeys and swine until the herd was quite large, and his father knew nothing about him. While he was sitting in the tree, however, he played his bagpipes and made music which was very beautiful. Once a king came traveling by who had lost his way and heard the music. He was astonished at it, and sent his servant forth to look all round and see from whence this music came. He spied about, but saw nothing but a little animal sitting aloft in the tree, which looked like a bird with a hedgehog on it, which made this music. Then the king told the servant he was asked why he sat there, and if he knew the road which led to his kingdom. So Hans the Hedgehog descended from the tree, and said he would show the way if the king would write a bond and promise him whatever he first met in the royal courtyard as soon as he arrived at home. Then the king thought, "I can easily do that. Hans the Hedgehog understands nothing, and I can write what I like." So the king took pen and ink and wrote something, and when he had done it, Hans the Hedgehog showed him the way, and he got safely home. But his daughter, when she saw him from afar, was so overwhelmed with joy that she ran to meet him and kissed him. Then he remembered Hans the Hedgehog and told her what had happened, and that he had been forced to promise whatsoever first met him when he got home to a very strange animal, which sat on a bird as if it were a horse and made beautiful music. But that instead of writing that he should have done, or that he should have what he wanted, he had written that she had... Fuck! I can't read this one sentence right here. Then he remembered Hans the Hedgehog, and told her what happened, and that he had been forced to promise whatsoever first met him when he got home to a very strange animal, which sat on a bird as if it were a horse, and made beautiful music, but that instead of writing that he should have what he wanted, he had written that she should not have it. Thereupon the princess was glad, and said he had done well, for she never would have gone away with the hedgehog. Why was that sentence so hard for me to read? What the heck? Hans the Hedgehog, however, looked after his donkeys and pigs, and was always merry, and sat on the tree and played his bagpipes. Now it came to pass that another king came journeying by with his attendants and runners, and he also had lost his way. Another king? How many kings are going down this road? What's going on here? He did not know how to get home again because the forest was so large. He likewise heard the beautiful music from a distance, and asked his runner what that could be, and told him to go and see. Then the runner went under the tree and saw that the bird was sitting at the top of it, and Hans the Hedgehog on the bird. The runner asked him what he was about up there. "I am keeping my donkeys and my pigs, but what is your desire?" The messenger said that they had lost their way and could not get back into their own kingdom, and asked if he would not show them the way. Then Hans the Hedgehog got down the tree with the bird, and told the aged king that he would show him the way if he would give him for his own whatsoever first met him in front of his royal palace. The king said yes and wrote a promise to Hans the Hedgehog that he should have this. That done, Hans rode on before him on the bird and pointed out the way, and the king reached his kingdom again in safety. When he got to the courtyard, there were great rejoicings. The king had an only daughter who was very beautiful. She ran to meet him, threw her arms around his neck, and was delighted to have her old father back again. She asked him where in the world he had been so long. So he told her how he had lost his way and had very nearly not come back at all, but that as he was traveling through a great forest, a creature, half hedgehog, half man, who was sitting astride a bird in a high tree and making music, had showed him the way and helped him to get out. But that in return he had promised him whatsoever first met him in the royal court, and how that she herself, which made him unhappy now. But on this she promised that for love of her father, she would willingly go with this Hans if he came. Hans the Hedgehog, however, took care of his pigs, and the pigs multiplied until they became so many in number that the whole forest was filled with them. Then Hans the Hedgehog resolved not to live in the forest any longer, and sent word to his father to have every sty in the village emptied, for he was coming with such a great herd that all might kill who wished to do so. When his father heard that, he was troubled, for he thought Hans the Hedgehog had died long ago. Hans the Hedgehog, however, seated himself on the bird and drove the pigs before him into the village, and ordered the slaughter to begin. Ha! But there was a killing and a chopping that might have been heard 2 miles off. After this, Hans the Hedgehog said, "Father, let me have the bird shot once more at the forge, and then I will ride away and never come back as long as I live." Then the father had the bird shod once more, and was pleased that Hans the Hedgehog would never return again. Hans the Hedgehog rode away to the first kingdom. There the king had commanded that whosoever came mounted on a bird and had bagpipes with him should be shot at, cut down, or stabbed by everyone, so that he might not enter the palace. What a traitor! How dare he! When therefore Hans the Hedgehog came riding thither, they all pressed forward against him with their pikes, but he spurred the bird, and it flew up over the gate in front of the king's window and lighted there, and Hans cried that the king must give him what he had promised, or he would take both his life and the daughter's. Whoa there! That's wild! That's some wild uprising stuff. What? Whoa! I feel like that is justified, I feel like, because that's a crazy thing to break a promise over. But okay. Then the king began to speak softly to his daughter and beg her to go away with Hans in order to save her life and her father's. So she dressed herself in white, and her father gave her a carriage with 6 horses and magnificent attendants, together with gold and possessions. She seated herself in the carriage and placed Hans the Hedgehog beside her with the bird and the bagpipes, and they took leave and drove away. Dang, okay. And the king thought he should never see her again. He was, however, deceived in his expectations, for when they were at a short distance from the town, Hans the Hedgehog... Oh no. I don't know if I like Hans the Hedgehog anymore. For when they were a short distance from the town, Hans the Hedgehog took her pretty clothes off and pierced her with his hedgehog skin until she bled all over. "That is the reward of your falseness," said he. "Go your way, I will not have you." And on that he chased her home again, and she was disgraced for the rest of her life. Oh no, man! Wait, I don't know if I like Hans the Hedgehog. Look, man, I know the king broke its promise, and that sucks real bad. But also, the daughter didn't do anything to you, and you just violated her like this? That's wild! Okay. Hans the Hedgehog, however, rode on further on the bird with his bagpipes to the dominions of the second king to whom he had shown the way. This one, however, had arranged that if anyone resembling Hans the Hedgehog should come, they were to present arms, give him safe conduct, cry long life to him, and lead him to the royal palace. When the king's daughter saw him, she was terrified, for he looked quite too strange. She remembered, however, that she could not change her mind, for she had given her promise to her father. So Hans the Hedgehog was welcomed by her and married to her, and had to go with her to the royal table, and she seated herself by his side, and they ate and drank. When the evening came and they wanted to go to sleep, she was afraid of his quills, but he told her she was not to fear, for no harm would befall her. And he told the old king that he was to appoint 4 men to watch by the door of the chamber and light a great fire. And when he entered the room and was about to get into bed, he would creep out of his hedgehog skin. He would creep out of his hedgehog skin and leave it lying there by the bedside, and that the men were to run nimbly to it, throw it in the fire, and stay by it until it was consumed. He could just take this off this whole time? What? When the clock struck 11, he went into the chamber, stripped off the hedgehog's skin, and left it lying by the bed. Then came the men and fetched it swiftly and threw it in the fire, and when the fire had consumed it, he was delivered, and lay there in bed in human form, but he was coal-black as if he had been burnt. The king sent for his physicians, who washed him with precious salves, and anointed him, and he became white, and was a handsome young man. What? Why do I feel like this is racist? When the king's daughter saw that she was glad, and the next morning they rose joyfully, ate and drank, and then the marriage was properly solemnized, and Hans the Hedgehog received the kingdom from the aged king. When several years had passed, he went with his wife to his father and said that he was his son. The father, however, declared he had no son. He had never had but one, and he had been born like a hedgehog with spikes, and gone forth into the world. Then Hans made himself known, and the old father rejoiced and went with him to his kingdom. Okay. Regarding the stories, there's so many themes of like, don't break your promises, otherwise terrible things happen. Which means like, all of these stories have been like, yeah, by the way, if you break your promises, you just fucking die. You just die, man. Like, what? What do you mean? I feel like that's a bit excessive. Am I wrong? I feel like that's a bit excessive for this kind of story, you know? But okay, I guess. I don't know. Also, I feel like this whole thing about like, oh, he showed up coal black and then became white and clean and handsome. I don't know. I feel like there's a racist undertone to that. Yeah, I mean, the Grimm brothers wrote this in, or they were alive rather, in 1785 to 1863, question mark. Publication date 1900. But still, this was pretty early on. Well, certainly before women had the rights that they have now, and certainly before a lot of like the more recent happenings with like making sure that everybody is equal and that people are people regardless of skin color. So historically speaking, I suppose it makes sense for the time, but yeah, reading it now, I'm like, oh dear, I can see the undertones in this. Ballistic says, how about the stories of the fearsome critters? Let me find that. Where are the fearsome critters? I'm trying to find where exactly that is. I also don't know if it's like named different things depending on which like book you go through. So let me scroll through real quick and see if I can find it. Because that will probably be my last story, if I can find it, that is. If I can't find it on this specific copy, I will go and look for it in a different one. Oh, they aren't Grimmtale stories. Okay. Then perhaps I will save that for a later time. Fearsome critters. Let me write that down and note that for the future. Maybe that will make a comeback in the future. Okie dokie. Let's find one more story to read. There's one called The Shoes That Were Danced to Pieces. That sounds interesting. What does that mean? They're their own thing. I believe there's a website dedicated to it. Okay. Yeah, I'll take a peek at that at some point. And we'll see. We'll see if I can make that a later episode. That would be cool. Alright, our last story for today. The shoes that were danced to pieces. There was once upon a time a king who had 12 daughters, each one more beautiful than the other. They all slept together in one chamber in which their beds stood side by side, and every night when they were in them, the king locked the door and bolted it. But in the morning when he unlocked the door, he saw that their shoes were worn out with dancing, and no one could find out how that came to pass. Then the king caused it to be proclaimed that whosoever could discover where they danced at night should choose one of them for his wife and be king after his death, but that whosoever came forward and had not discovered it within 3 days and nights should have forfeited his life. Hold on! Hold the phone! What do you mean? All of these stories have been about, oh, if you break your promise, you die, and oh, if you do this thing for me, you can have my daughter as a wife, but if you don't do it, you're gonna die. Like, what is this dichotomy? This is so weird. It's like, oh, the only good thing that you're getting is a wife who's a pretty, beautiful princess, and then, like, if you don't fulfill whatever thing, that you just straight up, like, ah, too bad, you die. What the heck? What the heck is this? It was not long before a king's son presented himself and offered to undertake the enterprise. He was well received, and in the evening was led into a room adjoining the princess's sleeping chamber. His bed was placed there, and he was to observe whether they went and danced, and in order that they might do nothing secretly or go away to some other place, the door of their room was left open. But the eyelids of the prince grew heavy as lead, and he fell asleep, and when he woke in the morning, all 12 had been to the dance, for their shoes were standing there with holes in the soles. On the second and third nights it fell out just the same, and then his head was struck off without mercy. My guy, I think that if I was taking on this task, I feel like I would at least try and do a better job of it. I don't know, is it really that hard to stay up all night? Granted, I haven't done too many, like, overnight, like, all-nighters in my life, but still, it's like, is it really that hard to stay awake, especially when the consequence is you die? Do you not have any adrenaline in your body? And you have 3 chances for this too. What do you mean you just fell asleep and then you die? Like, what? Many others came after this and undertook the enterprise, but all forfeited their lives? How many people can't stay up for just one night? Just one night, man. Now it came to pass that a poor soldier who had a wound and could serve no longer found himself on the road to the town where the king lived. There he met an old woman who asked him where he was going. I hardly know myself, answered he, and added in jest, I had half a mind to discover where the princesses danced their shoes into holes, and thus become king. That is not so difficult, said the old woman. You must not drink the wine which will be brought to you at night, and must pretend to be sound asleep. Oh. So were they being drugged? Wait, but that's crazy! If they were being drugged, or like being fed wine, then that's just senseless killing. What the heck? That's crazy! Why would they, what? Okay, I guess? With that, she gave him a little cloak and said, if you put on that, you will be invisible, and then you can steal after the 12. When the soldier had received this good advice, he went into the thing in earnest, took heart, went to the king, and announced himself as a suitor. He was as well received as the others, and royal garments were put upon him. He was conducted that evening at bedtime into the antechamber, and as he was about to go to bed, the eldest came and brought him a cup of wine, and he had tied a sponge under his chin and let the wine run down into it without drinking a drop. Then he lay down, and when he had lain a while, he began to snore as if in the deepest sleep. This feels very odd to me in the sense that I feel like this is an innuendo of sorts. Where it's basically saying like, oh, if you can last the whole night, you can have the lady. I feel like that's gotta be where the story came from, but it's just made more family friendly, I guess. Except for the fact that people keep dying, what the heck? The 12 princesses heard his snores and laughed, and the eldest said he too might as well have saved his life. With that, they got up, opened wardrobes, presses, cupboards, and brought out pretty dresses, dressed themselves with the mirrors, sprang about, and rejoiced at the prospects of the dance. Once the youngest said, I know not how it is. You were very happy, but I feel very strange. Some misfortune is certainly about to befall us. You are a goose who was always frightened, said the eldest. Have you forgotten how many king's sons have already come here in vain? I had hardly any need to give the soldier a sleeping draught. In any case, the clown would not have awakened. When they were all ready, they looked carefully at the soldier, but he had closed his eyes and did not move or stir, so they felt themselves quite secure. The eldest then went to her bed and tapped it. It immediately sank into the earth, and one after the other they descended through the opening, the eldest going first. Ooh, what is this? Secret chamber? Secret tunnel! The soldier who had watched everything tarried no longer and put on his little cloak and went down last with the youngest. Halfway down the steps he just trod a little underdressed, and she was terrified at that and cried out, What is that? Who is pulling at my dress? Don't be so silly, said the eldest. You have cut it on a nail. And they went all the way down, and when they were at the bottom, they were standing in a wonderfully pretty avenue of trees, all the leaves of which were silver and shone and glistened. The soldier thought, I must carry a token away with me, and broke off a twig from one of them, on which the tree cracked with a loud report. The youngest cried out again, Something is wrong. Did you hear the crack? But the eldest said, It is a gun fired for joy, because we have got rid of our prince so quickly. After that, they came into an avenue where all the leaves were of gold, and lastly into a third avenue where they were of bright diamonds. He broke off a twig from each, which made such a crack each time that the youngest started back in terror, but the eldest still maintained that they were salutes. They went on and came to a great lake, whereon stood 12 little boats, and in every boat sat a handsome prince, all of whom were waiting for the 12, and each took one of them with him. But the soldier seated himself by the youngest. Then her prince said, I can't tell why this boat is so much heavier today. I shall have to row with all my strength if I am to get it across. What should cause that? Said the youngest, but the warm weather. I feel very warm, too. On the opposite side of the lake stood a splendid, brightly lit castle, from whence resounded the joyous music of trumpets and kettle drums. They rode over there and entered, and each prince danced with the girl he loved, but the soldier danced with them unseen. And when one of them had a cup of wine in her hand, he drank it up so that the cup was empty when she carried it to her mouth. The youngest was alarmed at this, but the eldest always made her to be silent. They danced there till 3 o'clock in the morning, when all the shoes were danced into holes and they were forced to leave off. The princess rowed them back over the lake, and this time the soldier seated himself by the eldest. On the shore they took leave of their princess and promised to return the following night. When they reached the stairs, the soldier ran on in front and lay down on his bed, and when the 12 had come up slowly and wearily, he was already snoring so loudly that they could all hear him, and they said, So far as he is concerned, we are safe. They took off their beautiful dresses, laid them away, put the worn-out shoes under the bed, and laid down. Next morning the soldier was resolved not to speak, but to watch the wonderful goings-on, and again went with them. Everything was done just as it had been done the first time, and each time they danced until their shoes were worn to pieces. But the third time he took a cup away with him as a token. When the hour had arrived for him to give his answer, he took the 3 twigs and the cup and went to the king, but the 12 stood behind the door and listened for what he was about to say. When the king put the question, Where have my 12 daughters danced their shoes to pieces in the night? He answered, In an underground castle with 12 princes, and related how it came to pass, and brought out the tokens. The king then summoned his daughters and asked them if the soldier had told the truth. And when they saw that they were betrayed and that falsehood would be of no avail, they were obliged to confess all. Thereupon the king asked which of them he would have to wife. He answered, I am no longer young, so give me the eldest. Then the wedding was celebrated on the self-same day, and the kingdom was promised him after the king's death. But the princes were bewitched for as many days as they had danced nights with the 12. Interesting story. You got this one guy who finally made it through all 3 nights, but also, it said that he witnessed the dancing for all 3 nights in a row. So on one hand, I'm like, okay, 1 all-nighter makes sense, but 3? 3, man? I feel like that's a lot. I feel like I would have at least taken 1 of those days to rest. And also, thank you, Ballistic, for taking care of me. Thank you for rating with the hydrate and the posture check. Remember, everybody, to take care of yourselves. These stories were wonderful. I had a good time. I feel like, though, the age of these stories definitely shows through. So, like, I feel like, and also because they're such short stories, you can't get as much depth out of them as you might in, like, a lengthier story. So, it's all meant to be, like, very, like, short parables and little things, but I feel like they also, like, end up falling, unless I just coincidentally picked particular ones that were very similar, but I ended up picking a lot of stories that are just about kings promising their daughters as wives, and then killing people. I feel like that's the main takeaway that I got from these stories. I came here to disobey my parents, but if disobeying my parents means that I literally got my head chopped off, I think I might obey, actually. Like, god dang. So that's interesting. But yeah, I think these are also very cute. I think my favorite was also... I think my favorite was honestly the Frog Prince. I really liked that, what was it? That final ending poem in The Frog Prince that says, "The wheel does not break, 'tis the band round my heart, that to lessen its ache, when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart." And just the dedication of that guy to serving the prince. Although I am not an advocate for servitude in this day and age, I think that it is also very admirable. And also just like the prose of that as well, like the poetry of that is written very, very lovely. Yeah, and I'm also curious, like, are some of the stories that are earlier in this book, like their first few stories, and then it slowly develops later on? Because I feel like at the beginning, yes, you've got this talk about kings and princesses, but I don't know. I feel like I would have to read the whole book in order to really know if there's a trend or if they're all really kind of the same. But they're also very quaint stories, so I think that's kind of cute as well. Well, that is the Grimm fairy tales for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. We came in here expecting to disobey our parents and not follow the parables in these stories. But alas, I don't think that it would be a good idea. if the consequence is purely death. Yes. Well, alright. Thank you guys so much for watching and for joining me in this adventure. And I will see you guys during my next stream. And we will continue with more stories of other various types of folklores and fairy tales in episode 2 of Friday Night Fairy Tales next week. We'll be live on Wednesday, and then the video will be uploaded on Friday. So I'll be editing it on Thursday and uploading it on Friday for all of you to enjoy. I hope that you enjoyed this lovely series of stories this time around, and I think next time I will probably choose a lengthier story that is more so one full story all in one go. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. I will see you guys next time. And stay well, rest well, and stay dreaming, everybody. Good night. Bye-bye.